anyone know why this is increasing so rapidly?
I can give you multiple reasons as to why this is increasing, as you so unelegantly put it. Now, for context, if you think I'm unaware of what's happening with regards to SEND children and SEND needs around the country, I am a product of the system that failed. My wife is, and our children have been through that process, both successfully and unsuccessfully, in our own minds. Now, he says, particularly, and quite offensively, that the SEN budget is just this massive black hole that appears to be just continuously draining. What do you expect? Back in the 70s or 80s, they recognised there was an issue with this, so they developed special educational needs schools, effectively. Places where, smaller classrooms and such, so that children who have that particular profile would be able to get the education that they need and deserve. And it kind of worked, effectively. It wasn't perfect, but it was quite recognising it. Now, in the 90s, they reckoned that this problem could be solved, and then later on, by basically integrating minor people with minor SEN issues like dyslexia and, Asperger's syndrome, as it was called, into mainstream school with a little bit of help. That way they could embrace the full mainstream school experience and get their specialist help needed. It was a fair compromise, on paper at least. The problem that lies now is they've shut the majority of those SEND schools down, so there is nowhere to send children like that. So, where do they go? They go into mainstream. But if they need help and they're not getting it, then they're going to struggle. So, parents, rightly so, started applying for EHCP plans. And these include help to a specialist needs, and particular requirements in order for that child to develop, as it were. And the problem is that was only really, realistically, a short-term solution. You need to have SEND schools open, particularly those that can handle children of this variety. But instead, you're pushing out that, they can handle mainstream. No, they can't. So they need more support, and that's why the money is getting more and more. But then, instead of trying to understand the problem of parents asking for help, what do you get? They get blamed, saying, oh no, it's the parents' fault. They get visits by social care. They get visits and told, oh, you need to do training to know your child's needs, or better simulate it in the family household. That doesn't work. Those parents, us, are living with it day in and day out. We know our children a lot better than you would claim to be. And then you have the guts to argue, well, why are parents self-diagnosing children? They're not. They're trying to get it through the NHS. Do you know how long the waiting list is to even get that close to getting the assessment? You're not talking weeks or even months, you're talking years. Years to be told by a bunch of professionals, yes, he may have this diagnosis or he may not. And in those years, that child is in the mainstream school without additional help, without the things that they need to develop, and they're struggling and they fall behind, which means in the long run they're going to need more help to even try and keep them going in their own progression. Not to the progression that they should be, but just progressing at a level that they can keep up with at that point. The damage is done. But it feels like, and feel free to correct me at any point, reply to this, comment on this, I beg you. What it seems to imply is that once they are out of the educational system, they will no longer be a problem. The damage will be done then. You'll then effectively have someone with greater mental issues, considering the fact they've been through mainstream, without enough help or in the wrong environment, having long-term mental issues. Like me, like my wife, like our eldest child. And that kind of damage does not get undone. You just try and live with it to the best of your abilities. And this seems to be the case in so many parents. But instead of listening to them or thinking of a proactive solution to avoid long-term consequences, or even pragmatically long-term costs of people who are unprepared for the world as a whole, instead of doing that, they blame the parents, they blame every other aspect, instead of looking at the problem inwards. That, and when you couple in the fact that less funding is going to schools, this is just going to get more and more and more. Oh, and I've saved the best to last, because this is a full-on rant. This isn't wisdom, this is a full-on rant today. You said, well, they had systems in place in the 50s and 60s. How dare you? How dare you even say that they worked? They didn't. What you effectively are resorting to there is putting anyone with a mental illness into an institution. That does not work in any way, shape or form. It just makes matters worse. And I have seen the damage that has done to people. And you even thinking that, oh, it worked at the time. Yeah, it just threw the problem away in a hole that no one knew was there. People and generations suffered because of that. So don't you dare even remotely say that that was a good idea at the time. It wasn't. It was awful. It's tantamount to torture. So if you want to solve the problem, here is a simple thing. Start investing in the system. Start recognising when these problems develop, rather than relying on the parents, working overtime, going through the whole EHCP process, the full tribunal process. You want to help? Make it easier for people to get the EHCP plan, rather than go with the 100% rate of going, you know what, you're at fault. Because you're just going to make it worse. And it is going to crash underneath your system.